Legislative Action Committee. Gene Ramsey is our chair. Sherry Lund does a lot of the work, so thank you for putting this together. Franklin County Farm Bureau is one of our sponsors today, as well as American Legion Post 60, Walmart Logistics, and Advantage Ford. My name is Ryan Henningsen. I'm with Edward Jones Investments, and I bought all your donuts today. So, also thank you to the City of Ottawa for letting us use this room this morning. It's a nice place to hold this forum. First off, just want to say thank you to our legislators for coming out this morning. Kevin Jones, Karen Tyson, and Blaine Finch. We appreciate your time and being here to talk to us this morning. What I'm going to do is give them a few minutes to update us on what they're working on, some things they want to talk about, and then we'll spend the majority of the time this morning opening it up for questions. And we'll kind of go over some ground rules when we get there. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jones to get us started with a quick update.
Cool. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Ryan, for the donuts. Thank you to the chamber and everybody who has set this up, and also thank you guys for coming out this morning. So very important for the information to get out there and for us to understand, especially at a state level, how that's going to impact us here at home and a local level. So I missed the first one. I was down in Garnett, which is in the middle of my district, for the opening of our hospital down in Garnett, which was just amazing. I'll be honest, there was 300 or 400 people there just when I was there, and it was in and out for hours and hours. So it was really good experience. So if you do live close down there or haven't been through there, it's something to definitely go tour. They just did their first move-ins this week, and so that's one of the highlights of this last month for my district, is the opening of the Garnett Hospital. Also, for me, because I wasn't here the first time, I wanted to tell you where I'm at on my committees. I'm on one of the ones that is going to be interesting this year. Is I'm on pensions and benefits, which I've been on. This is my third year on pensions and benefits. I'm also on military veterans, homeland security. I'm on Health and Human Services, which hits home a lot also, and then the last one is financial institutions. I was switched from education budget, and because I was on education budget for 2 years, I looked at the people they put on there, and so for me, there's a lot of people with a lot of experience on education budget this year. I think it's going to be a place where they're really going to focus and do some changes and stuff like that. So that's kind of insight that maybe not everybody sees into kind of moving around different things when it comes to that. But that being said, I am on pensions and benefits, and one of the things that we're working on real hard right now is the possibility of bonding or taking a loan out as a state, putting $1.5 billion essentially into investments. It's bonding, and then from that, over a few years, you start to see a return on that investment, and putting that money into capers essentially. Scary part about that is if I'm not there in 2 years, or who knows what a future legislature might do with that money. So yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of, and I would love to get your feedback on that when it comes to the bonding out money to actually fill a void or a possible void, and obviously we are doing a lot better in our pensions and benefits given the current year and the return that we're getting right now. But that's a quick update. I'll pass it on.
Thanks, Kevin. Good morning. Senator Tyson, most of you know me. It's good to see you guys again. This is a great group and beautiful day to be outside. So I hope you get to enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you for taking the time to come, and thank you to our sponsors. You know, it is an interesting year, and we've heard so much about the budget. Last year, we increased the budget spending by 6%, okay? But we took in 2% more. So even with the tax cuts, we took in 2% more money, but we spent 6% more. Well, you guys can do the math. That's pretty simple. If you keep spending more than you're taking in, you're going to have a problem. And that's what's happened here. We are spending much more than we are taking in, and so we've just got to pull the spending in. If we keep continuing to spend, we're growing government. And that's not what we're about. We're about a free society, a free America, free Kansas. So, we support smaller government. We just got to get smart about it. One of the things that we did have one of the first bills on the Senate floor. It was interesting. It was a result of a legislative post audit that I had asked for. What it does is we have the Office of Information Systems Technology. I asked for the legislative audit because you guys have heard me say it, that we were paying $42.50 a month per phone jack, per computer jack in the Capitol. That may not seem like a lot, but can you imagine every single office, every single committee room, every position on the floor, $42.50 a month, 12 months a year. So I started digging in and asked for a legislative post audit. What that audit found is that this OITS has a $36 million budget with no oversight, none. They have a fee structure, and they were ignoring that fee structure. They were charging different departments whatever they felt like. And the report actually says that. And what happened was they were overcharging, which we cannot do because we do get some federal money. And so they were overcharging anywhere between $2 to $6 million since 2009. And as a result of that, the federal government did an audit, and we ended up paying the federal government $2.5 million. So that's just money we're wasting. So what Senate Bill 4 would do is it would create, it would move OITS out from underneath the Department of Administration, and that way their budget is transparent to the legislature and to the public. So we can see what's going on with it, and that's just good business. What was interesting, though, in the government, or politics 101, we passed the bill unanimously in the Senate. Well, it goes over to the House. The House does a gut and go. They completely gut the bill and put a provisional budget in it. That's, anyhow, so it's Senate Bill 4 that was your provisional budget, but what the bill originally started out was to make it transparent for OITS. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to see that bill in another bill at some time. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of the inside chess game that goes on up there. And the provisional budget was a budget that increased spending $151 million. Now, I just told you we went up 6% the year before. Well, this provisional budget to get us through so that they could pay bills increased spending $151 million. That's going in the wrong direction. So we need to really look at this thing, and I know you guys are going to have questions on Senate Bill 71 and all that, so I'll save them for later. But we've got our work cut out for us as always, and I'm looking forward to digging in and trying to find solutions for Kansas.
Well, thank you all for coming out this morning. It is a great day, and hopefully we get done close to on time so you can get outside. I, too, would echo the comments from the senator that I want to thank the sponsors today and all the folks who have put this together and organized the opportunity to visit with so many of you in such a really efficient fashion coming together like this. I would want to start just taking a moment of remembrance for Annette Hedke, who is the wife of Representative Dennis Hedke from Wichita. She passed away this week in what can only be described as a pretty freak accident in a parking lot in Wichita. And I have had occasion at a reception last year to be standing in line with Dennis and to get to know him a little better. And we talked about our daughters and our mutual love and respect for our daughters, and nothing brings dads together quite like that. And I know if he had that kind of affinity for his daughters, what he must have felt for his wife, who I was unfortunately never able to meet. But our thoughts and our prayers and our condolences go out to the Hedke family in this time of loss that came quite suddenly and unexpectedly. And Dennis, we're thinking about you, and the funeral is Monday afternoon, so it will suspend legislative business a bit this week and as we go through that time. It was a very busy week in Topeka. A lot of developments, everything from voting on the House rules early in the week, and then dealing with the rescission budget later in the week, and then what I call the Thursday surprise when we got allotments to education that I don't think many of us in the House knew were coming. And I think they broke as the Senate was getting ready to debate and vote on the rescission bill. So a lot of big developments this week in terms of the state's financial picture, in terms of K through 12 and higher education, and a lot for us to kind of unpack this morning and talk about. And I think there's some things that happened this week that really the ramifications of which we won't fully comprehend and be able to deal with for several more days. But at least I know a lot of these topics are going to be of import to you. We've also got a lot of other moving parts going on right now in the legislative process. This is the kind of the opening time. We're about a third of the way through the session now, and all of these ideas are flying fast and furious through different committees, and people are becoming alarmed. Will this bill make it? Will that bill make it? And so we'll probably talk about some of those ideas this morning as well. Just quickly on why the Senate bill got gutted and gone, as we say, or they call it, I think in North Dakota they call it hog shedding. There's every state, if you talk to legislators from other states, there's different terms of art in every state when they do this. They basically take the contents out and stick something else in. We were being told by the administration that if the rescission bill didn't pass by the end of this week, then the state was going to be unable to meet its financial obligations and pay its ongoing bills by the end of February. So there was a sense of urgency created, and for those of you who have been around the legislative process, you know that's typical. We always say it's got to get done right now. Well, it typically doesn't have to get done right now, but there's nothing that will bring people together to vote for something like saying, oh, if we don't have this today, if we don't have this by the end of this week, those kinds of conversations go on. So that was the rationale behind it. They put it back into that Senate shell so that the Senate could just concur with what the House had done, and then the bill would go to the governor's desk. If we had passed it in the House shell, the Senate would have debated it, could have amended it, and then we would have had a conference committee, and then we would have gone through the process of voting on that conference committee report. So this was just a move to try to get the bill done faster. That rescission budget passed with 88 of 91 Republicans voting for it in the House, and passed with, I think, the majority of, obviously, Republicans voting for it in the Senate. The only folks who voted against in the House were Democrats and a couple of Republicans who were upset about other things. Ostensibly, the former appropriations chairman, who thought he could have crafted a better bill, voted against it. And most of us recognized it was a bad bill. It's not one we all liked, but in order to keep the lights on and keep schools funded and keep courts open, we voted for that. The increase in spending in that bill is largely human services caseloads for KDHE and KDADs, which means that those who receive, those who are at COF, those who are on disability, those who are vulnerable in our society, that spending is used to handle their caseload services. And it also did include $2.5 million to pay the federal audit penalty for the information technology audit that the senator mentioned. So we did get that in there and did get that paid. So look forward to your questions. A lot to talk about, and glad to be here with you this morning. Thank you for coming out.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and thank you again for being here. The Legislative Action Committee puts these coffees on, minus coffee this morning, sorry about that, for a forum for you all. This is your forum, and we appreciate you all being here, and we want to provide you an opportunity to meet with and ask your legislators questions. That being said, remember, they are our guests. They're volunteers. They work hard for us. So let's just keep our questions and comments respectful. Also, I'm going to ask, in respect of everyone in attendance, their time, and to get to as many questions as possible, if you could ask only 2 questions. And when you do that, please state your name and where you're from. And since we're 15 minutes in, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions.
Darrell McKinnon, Ottawa. Last year, the legislature asked Kansas NEA, Kansas Association of School Boards, and United School Administrators to work together in developing a comprehensive proposal built around the contract negotiations. They finished their work, and that work is embodied in Senate Bill 136. There will also be a matching bill introduced into the House The governor's own educational efficiency task force made no proposed changes to do anything regarding contract negotiations. They did that knowing that the compromise was being worked out by these groups. However, a dissenting minority report led by lobbyist Dave Trabert was turned into House Bill 2034. This bill would limit mandatory negotiable items to only salary. That would basically eliminate anything else from being able to be negotiated unless boards of education wish to do so. I would like to ask all three of you if you would support the compromise legislation worked out by our education professional organizations.
I'll go ahead and go first. Thank you for the question, and, you know, I haven't read the bill, and it's very difficult to commit to a bill before you've read anything, but I like the fact that both groups came together and worked it out, and so we really need to give that a lot of consideration when we're working these bills. I'm probably one of the few up there, and I do know a majority of Republicans voted on the budget and stuff, but as far as I'm concerned, this is nonpartisan. Once you're up there representing, you represent the whole district. And so, you know, I think we've got to look at each bill as it comes through. I'm not as heavy-handed on the negotiations. I feel like, you know what, if a group of people want to get together and negotiate, they should be able to get together and negotiate. So we need to be very cautious when we move forward on these bills. And, you know, one of the things that the House did that will help something like this is when they were debating the rules, there is joint rules at the end of session where we come together and we conference on bills and that we don't agree on. So if we wouldn't have concurred on the budget bill, the Senate, then they would have gone to conference, it would have had to go through a little different procedure, but the Senate would have got some say in that bill and we would have conferenced on it. That did not happen. The discussion was you accept the House position and move on, or, you know, you choose by your vote. You state where you want to be on that position. So what we ended up doing is the House passed in the joint rules where you could only put 2 bills together at once. And it's called bill bundling. We do a lot of it at the end of session. And I took a lot of grief, especially from the tax chairman, on my vote on that. I agreed with the House position on that. We should not be putting more than 2 bills in at once. In fact, I think each bill should stand on its own. But so what happened in the Senate, though, was they removed the joint rule and said that all bills could be bundled as is, and they forced that bill to go to conference committee, so there's going to be a compromise. What came out of the compromise Friday is 5 bills at once. Well, that's still a lot of bills, and, you know, we could end up with something that that wasn't negotiated by both sides. So I do know when we worked on the employment workers' comp and that legislation, when both sides came together, there was very minimal change to those bills that came out of committee and the legislature. So it helps to have both sides of position come together and work it out. So we'll see what happens with it. But, you know, it'll be interesting with these guys.
Well, I'm not on the Education Committee, so I haven't seen either Senate Bill 136, which hasn't made it to the House yet, or House Bill 2034. Here's what I understand of them. The compromise bill, there's over 30 items that teachers and school boards can negotiate on in a given year. And the compromise bill allows for, I think, 10 of those items to be open every year, kind of mandatorily, and that would include items like salary. And then each side can pick 5 additional items that they bring to the table and will negotiate on. So it avoids every year being open season for 30-plus items to be negotiated on and kind of limits the scope of negotiations. As an attorney, I can tell you anytime we're getting down to brass tacks and limiting those items, that's a positive move towards getting a deal done. The fact that the bill itself is a compromise and negotiated between the Kansas Association of School Boards and KNEA is a very positive thing. It shows that our administrators and teachers do not have to be at loggerheads. There is common interest there to come together and work in the best interest of our students and our citizens, and I like that idea. I look forward to getting a chance to review the bill and sussing out the details for myself, but I tell you, I'm much more positive on a proposal like that than one that comes from an ideological lobbying position from one person. And in the debate on the, I think, Senate Bill 136 in the committee process, Dave Trabert would not disclose who his clients were, who was paying his freight, and yet demanded the same of the other groups, and was upset that KNEA and KASB were there representing their various constituencies. And that sort of double standard and hypocrisy, it turns me off as a legislator, as a person who, in the world of ideas, we should all be able to come together and have a position and talk about it. But don't come in disingenuously saying that these folks have an agenda and I don't. Somebody's clearly, writing the paycheck there, and they're the ones whose views Mr. Trabert and others are espousing. So I have a problem with that. I think it comes from a place not of improving the process, but of taking care of the folks who are paying the bills.
Thank you for the question. Actually, for asking it in such a way that makes a lot of sense. I have to admit, I don't know a whole lot about this bill. Obviously, both of these guys haven't really seen it either, but I heard rumors about it, and a lot of times that's how we come about stuff. You say, hey, did you hear what happened in education, or did you hear? But what I did hear is that you guys were all standing up and agreeing, and that my first question is, really? Because that's a good thing. And so I tend to, on this particular issue, I tend to think the more local it is, the better. Being on a school board, I just like it like that. Think that it makes more sense. But, I'm hopeful with everybody agreeing, and all I have to do is look at it, and I can tell you kind of where I stand on it when it comes to that. But like I said, right now I'd say keep it as local as possible. So.
Okay, thank you. Good news, we have coffee in the back.
Yay.
Thank you, Richard Neistat and Bob Busick.
This question's for all three of you. Since Brownback now has decided to cut schools more, just this last week, and then we've got a bond issue that's been proposed for Ottawa schools of $63 million. How do you go about telling people that, is he going to cut more and scared of paying more taxes? Are we going to be able to sustain our schools with all this going on? And also about, I think, Blaine, I think you mentioned or talked about block grants. Could you all three talk about what that is? Thank you.
You want to start, Ryan?
Blaine, go ahead and start, if you would, please.
And I referenced in my opening, Gene, that the allotments came as a surprise, I think, to many House members. We had no idea those were coming when we voted on the rescission budget, and my vote may have been different on the rescission budget, knowing that there were going to be education cuts coming unilaterally from the governor's office later in the week, and I think that's probably maybe why we didn't know they were coming later in the week. The impact, and in the governor's allotment message, he indicates something. He talks about something called Senate Bill 71, which is a bill introduced by Senator Masterson over on the Senate side that also makes cuts to education spending. And he says, well, if you all will pass that bill, I won't do these 1.5% cuts to K through 12 education in Kansas. In looking at the impact to the districts that I represent, USD 290, USD 287, and USD 421 over in Linden, I think all of them fare better under the 1.5% cut than they do under Senate Bill 71. So there's really no incentive for me to want to run out and cut my districts more under Senator Masterson's bill. What I would say is this: when you have districts, any party, and there's a value to government that's called stability. Whether you're a business person and you want to make decisions on where you invest your capital or when you're going to hire people, whether you're a school district and you're making decisions on when do we try to let bonds and build a new school or improve our facilities, stability and predictability are vitally important. And when we do this up and down with the budget, we take that away. And for a taxpayer to say, yeah, I'm comfortable going out and voting for $63 million in new bonding because I know that this support from the state is going to be level or it's going to match inflation, there's a comfort level there. When they have no comfort of that, it absolutely jeopardizes the ability to make future plans. And I think we do a disservice to the citizens of the state of Kansas when we don't adopt fiscal policies that allow for predictability and stability going forward. The block grants that you mentioned is a proposal in the governor's state of the state. I understand we're supposed to get a look at that bill next week. It's supposed to land in the committees. At this point, I have far more questions than I could ever feel comfortable saying I support that proposal to move away from the formula. I certainly think there are tweaks we can make to the formula that will provide enhancements. One of the concerns that many people have, Gene, is that we use free and reduced lunch as our barometer of what makes a student at risk. There's other data that is not as subject to being fudged, if you will, that we could use for that. We could use census data that's updated every year to define that and provide more comfort and transparency and help people feel that there's not as much fraud, because there's only about 3% of those cases that get audited by the federal government. There's things we can do to improve the transparency in the formula, to improve the efficiencies in the formula, absolutely. But throwing a baby out with the bathwater and saying we're just going to provide block grants now and school districts are free to spend this money wherever, part of the reason we have these silos that many complain about in school funding is because we want the money targeted to that purpose. And so we say we're going to spend the money on that purpose. If you take away those silos and just give block grants, you open it up for school districts to spend money on things that money is really not designed for. And if this district over here wants to have a really great football team, they can spend money on football facilities. And if this district over here wants to spend it on performing arts or on salaries or something else, there's no real accountability anymore because you've taken away the connection between the funding formula and what the money can be spent on. So if we really want efficiency, transparency, and accountability, we're moving in the wrong direction if we're just going to hand over a pot of money.
Well, let me give you a little bit of history on Senate Bill 71. And I had no idea that the governor was going to do the allotments this week. In fact, I didn't know he was going to cut K through 12. I thought the allotments were finished. But so on Senate Bill 71, in May last year, 2014, the legislature voted on and passed a bill that would increase K through 12 funding by $129 million. Okay, that was an increase, $129 million. What happened, though, was in November, the legislature gets notified that, oh, it wasn't a $129 million increase, it was a $190 million increase. And while that went on, before that happened, in July, when the school boards, the school districts get their money, the Department of Education was telling the school districts that they had $190 million more to spend. Not the $129 million that the legislature had voted on, $190 million. And it was a result of the complication of the school formula. I mean, it is so complicated, and they plugged in different numbers, so of course they got different numbers on the output. That's one of the reasons we need to address the funding formula in Kansas. There's other examples too that I can give, but that's why Senate Bill 71 came about, was because we were trying, the bill, what it does is, and it's kind of interesting because I spoke to some superintendents this morning already, and they are in favor of Senate Bill 71 if the allotments go away, because the allotments take off $42 per student on the base state aid. Senate Bill 71 affects the LOB and the equalization. And I know it's a little bit, the formula's complicated, but what Senate Bill 71 does is, right now, the way we figure, you list each school district in order on their valuations. And the way it's figured now, Burlington is one of the top school districts. It's a very small school district, but they do have the power plant. Well, Blue Valley and the Johnson County schools receive equalization money based on that equation. Well, most of us in this room would say they don't need equalization. Those schools are not hurting. They can raise money fairly easily with a mill, or a half mill, or a portion of a mill. So what the Senate Bill 71 does is it changes the equation, and it puts those schools that are wealthier, like the Blue Valley School District, at the top. They would not qualify for equalization. And what it does is our rural schools would qualify. We would fall in the bottom portion of that, so we would qualify for equalization. Now, the superintendents that I spoke to said that they would rather have, now the problem that I see with Senate Bill 71, and I don't know if we're going to be able to change this or not, The bill reads that it takes effect immediately. So that means that the budget year that they've already taken care of, they would see a change in that money this year. And that's what the governor did. He pulled the rug out from underneath us in the middle of the year. Any of us that are budgeting, you get your income, you expect that money. So I do have some heartburn over that. So what we can do is we can amend Senate Bill 71 so that it doesn't take effect until fiscal year 2016. But the superintendents, so it'd be great to hear what you guys think. The superintendents that I spoke to would actually rather see Senate Bill 71 pass and the allotments taken away. So, which does make more sense because the way the budget works, there's silos, it's complicated, but it would give the school boards and the superintendent more room to function and to budget their school year. So that's where we are looking at right now. And as far as the block grant goes, I can't see that as a solution. The formula needs changed, but why would we wipe out everything that we have and not, just have a set amount of money and not know what those rules are? Until we see the bill, I can't commit to it one way or the other. But right now, the theory doesn't sound good.
Thank you for your time. I'll try and be quick and not talk too fast. Original question was the block grants and are we going to be able to sustain? It hit me sideways. I was walking through the hall looking at my phone, and I got that thing from the governor. I sat down. I was just like, you can't, man. Because, one of the things that is very difficult when it comes to the political world, part of the reason I call my newsletter The Playground is because of the manipulation factor. When things come out, when things happen, so your first thought is, this came out right after. We made some pretty difficult decisions in the rescission and the actual cutting. And so, I saw it and went, oh, great. Going to a coffee, what do you say about this? I mean, my goodness. But ultimately, if you just back up and look at the whole thing, each year, when we're on education budget, the regions come, they're getting cut. They came, they asked for like 4%. We gave them 2%, and then the governor said, you know what, 2% more, back off. So the regions asked for a certain amount. They thought they were going to get a certain amount, and then they got a little bit less than what they thought. Ultimately, we increase, for the most part, as Senator Tyson was saying, we increase every year, and the spending is where it gets. That's what the question is. Are we going to bring back our spending so we can actually pay for what we have or not? And ultimately, I'm for the reducing and spending. I think that, I know that our schools are going to sustain. They're going to sustain. It takes creative and hard decisions at the school board level and especially at the administration level, but it will sustain. And so ultimately, I think that where we hurt is ultimately where the workman's worth the hire, or teachers, people like that don't get a raise. That's where I struggle, is where we make promises, or just we have an idea that when we take a position, if I do a good job and I continue working, that I'm going to get an increase. And then, and now at this point, it's coming very, very slowly, if you will, or not at all. And so, ultimately, the schools are going to sustain. They have to sustain. It's just, we're trying to take, and I guess the governor is really the one who's doing it. He's trying to take this much and put it into a box this big, and so it gets stuffed in there. And then we all go, oh, okay, and then we try and explain it, but more questions?
Ryan, can I speak just a moment on Senate Bill 71? I want to talk about what happened there, because we've had some statements made by other legislators, none of whom are here today, about the role of the Kansas Department of Education and what happened with last year's education bill. You heard it said that there was $129 million allocated last year for equalization, and we were going to fully fund the formulas that helps every Kansan, regardless of where they're born, get the same quality of education as that child grows up and graduates from an accredited Kansas high school. We had been underfunding that formula, and so local school districts were using local property tax revenues to make up the gap. And what we said last year, what the court told us to do, was to fully fund equalization. That is to make the state make its payments. And so what school districts did when we allocated that money is they cut back on the amount of local property tax dollars that they were using to do that. What also happened, and no one could have foreseen this at the time, is that property values increased. As we were coming out of the Great Recession, real property values increased. You can blame your local county appraiser on that. And when that happened, that $129 million in the formula went to $190 million. Now, there are those in the legislature who blame the Kansas Department of Education, said you should have seen that coming. Well, we couldn't have seen that coming because the real property values weren't certified till after the legislative session. Okay? The other thing that bears thinking about here is that that bill was passed in the middle of the night over a 3-day weekend where nobody had time to go back and run financial projections of what may happen. And so if anyone is to blame for this increase, it is those who pushed this bill through in the wee hours of the morning last year. We had no time to fully explore the ramifications of what we were voting on.
Okay, I'm gonna have to rebuttal.
And
I'm
that's
gonna
why-
have to
and
rebuttal
that's
on
why-
the representative.
And that's why the House this time says we're not going to work after midnight. We're going to shut it down. We'll come back at 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll give time for the professionals that we pay, because we're a citizen legislature. All of us have other jobs or do other things. And we will let those professionals that get paid a wage to do that, do the financial modeling and tell us what the ramifications of these actions are. And we can make a wise decision when we've considered those options.
What's interesting is that nobody decided to notify the legislature on the increase. If you had a bill and you signed up to buy something for $129 million, wouldn't you want to be notified that the increase was to $190 million? And it wasn't just the valuations. The formula is so complicated that it was also the number of students. There were other factors in the equation too. So it is something that we need to look at for the state of Kansas. I mean, you know, there's a lot of teachers in the room, and we have tried and tried to pass a bill that would require 65% of the funding to go to the classroom and the teachers. The best that we can get is a goal. So, you know, it's not about the spending anymore. We spend $3 billion on 286 school districts. It's about how we're spending the money. We were just told this morning, we have a school district that paid $45,000 for one piano, So I appreciate your guys' input, and thank you.
My name's Linda Alderman, and I live in Ottawa. On Thursday, as we are all well aware, Governor Brownback blamed the sales tax decline for cuts to schools, and our funding in USD 290 is going to take a hit of $139,000 plus change. The sales tax revenue for the current fiscal year is up $27 million. The income tax revenue for the current fiscal year is down $90 million. It's not Obama's fault, it's not Santa's fault, and it's not the piano's fault. It's the fault of Governor Brownback's failed income tax policy. We cannot smoke or drink our way out of this. The easy, we'll give it a go, but the easiest way out of it is to restore the income tax rates to the pre-Brownback era levels. What are you all willing to do that? How are you going to help us do that to get Kansas out of this mess?
Thank you. Thank you for the question and the creative way to ask it. I love it. Made me smile. Here's the thing. I was, as soon as, you know, I guess I've heard it in the past, but when it came up as in the papers as the sin tax again, yeah, I kind of went, what? Sin tax? And then I realized, oh, I see why they're calling it sin tax, but I don't really see it as a sin. But that being said, given my my background in the church and stuff, I just go, okay, okay, sim tax. But I do know what Governor Brownback is trying to do with that is simply, and there's a lot of reason when it comes to doing a flat tax, a fair tax, or consumption tax type of thing. This follows that guideline. When you put a person like the governor into a box and say, okay, fix this problem, how are you going to do it? And he wouldn't normally be about raising taxes. What he does is he looks for something that's a consumption thing, I guess. And so you've got the cigarettes and the liquor and the different things like that, and say, well, you can raise taxes here. And I'll be honest, and I put it out in the newsletter, $80 million that would come in from that tax, I'm just like, I honestly, I just don't see it. I would simply get in my car, I would drive with the low gas rates, I'd drive over to Missouri and buy it for a lot less and come back, for my 6-month, fix or whatever. So I don't know that we would actually get that much from that particular thing. Although, that being said, I am for a more fair tax versus raising the actual income tax. The reason I say that is because ultimately, that's where you get job growth. And we've had a 2% increase when it comes to that. I know. But that's what I would say is best. And here's the other thing. It's been going for a year and a half. We haven't even given it really time to really work. That's the way, from an objective point, I know. But from an objective view, I look at it and I go, give this a chance to work. I really believe it will. So.
For sure. I'm glad to. I've said it and I'll say it again, Kansas has a spending problem. You can't continue to increase spending. And it was funny, one of the guys from legislative research, and it was pretty simple, he held his hand up at about a 45-degree angle, and he said, we've been increasing spending at this slope for how many years now? And all we've done is brought it down to about a 30 or 25-degree angle. We've got to get that down lower. We keep growing government, and then we ask why we have a problem. We can't continue to, we're going to have to dig in and look for the wasteful spending. I gave you a great example on the $36 million. I've got another example here too. We gave out $107 million in 2012 to tax credits. That's to businesses and companies for credits for not paying their taxes. We don't need government picking and choosing which businesses or which people get breaks. We need to make it a level playing field. That's $107 million right there. We just level the playing field, do what we said we were going to do. Then we can lower taxes for everyone. I ran on smaller government and less taxes and less spending, and that's what we've got to do, and that's what I'm digging in to do.
We find ourselves in pretty dire financial straits at this point as a state, and there's not going to be one solution to this problem. It's a complicated problem, and it's going to require a complicated solution. It's not as easy as saying we're going to reverse the tax cuts back to whatever they were before. Politics is the art of the possible, and that's not possible. There's simply not the will in the legislature to do that. There are tweaks that can be made around the existing tax structure that can help. Pass-through income, there's discussion about whether pass-through income with LLCs and subchapter S's, which is essentially tax-free now. If you go out and create an LLC or own a subchapter S business like my law firm, any income that I take in through that I pay 0 taxes on, even though my assistant to whom I pay a wage pays a percentage of her income in taxes. I think that's inherently unfair, that some pay none and others are expected to pay. I think that there should be balance across the system. I think there are others who agree with that. But you're going to see a lot of various things, and the rescission bill was a good example of, rather than deal with the problem head on, we're going to transfer money from KDOT. We're going to talk about raising cigarette and alcohol taxes, and we're going to blame these cuts on sales taxes. We need to have a hard and honest conversation about how we got here and how we get out of here. And so long as we continue to blame things like sales tax receipts, instead of talking about the fact that state revenues are down around $5.7 billion in the general fund because of the income tax cuts, we're never going to get there. People say, well, go up there and you guys get together and figure out how to solve the problem. You can't do that if somebody says, I don't think there's a problem. There's really nothing to negotiate after that point because I don't think we have a problem, and you think we do, and if there's nothing for us to talk about fixing here, we're not going to get very far. The reality is that state general fund spending since 2007 has gone from 5.6 billion, and this is by year, to 6.1 to 5.2 to 5.6 to 6.1 to 6.1 to 5.9, and it's supposed to jump up next year to 6.3. I voted against the budget that put it up to 6.3 because we didn't have the money to fund 6.3. Everything gets more expensive. Everything. You don't go to the grocery store and pay today what you paid for a gallon of milk 6 months ago or a year ago or 20 years ago. And we have to expect that there's going to be some inflation in the operation of government as well. It still takes gasoline and new vehicles to run KDOT. It takes money to buy asphalt to pave roads. School districts cost money. It costs money to pay teachers, and it costs money to pay them a little more each year. Our public retirement folks have not received a cost of living adjustment in some time. Some of our state employees have not received cost of living adjustments in some time. We have tried to hold the line on that. That is not to say that there's not waste and abuse within our government system that should be ferreted out and cleaned up, and we should all pay less because of that. I absolutely agree with that. But the notion that we're not going to see any growth in state government in spending is tantamount to saying, I want to go to the grocery store tomorrow and pay what I paid for a gallon of milk in 1999. It's not reasonable. It's just, it doesn't work. There is no universe in which you just hold stagnant and never pay more, except seemingly electronics, which is kind of some weird exception, right? TVs somehow get cheaper, so I guess if we bought more TVs, we could work that out. TV for every room, yeah, the chicken in every pot.
Yeah, how
So-
about gas, too? I'll take the gas price right now
Gas goes
also.
up, and gas is great, but what that does to our severance tax collection in the state of Kansas is it's going to go down. And it's another source of revenue that the state has used in making those budgets. Here's my point. It goes back to something I said earlier. We need stable tax policy. Nothing wrong with cutting. Nothing wrong with reducing when we have the ability to do so. And the state did that throughout the 90s. You remember we used to collect 35 mills for public education. It's now 20. And that was a scant 15 years ago that we made that cut, a sizable cut in the amount of property tax collected by the state of Kansas that was being sent to public education. So that's gone down significantly. We never talk about that anymore. Oh, what a great tax cut we got. Remember that? No, we talk about, man, government's huge. And the federal government is huge. And state all funds budget does continue to grow, and that's the one we never talk about. But the state general fund since 2007 has kind of bumped around the $6 billion mark. Can we do better? Absolutely we can do better, but we need to be honest about how we do better. And we need to look at tax policy that's stable and that doesn't provide a situation where somebody can make money and pay zero and somebody else has to pay, because that's not right. So we need to figure out how to get it to be fair, and we need to figure out how to get it to be stable so that people can project into the future, and we need to figure out how to pay our bills so that we're not running rescission budgets and allotments every year to make up the difference.
Dennis George, Ottawa, Kansas. This comes back to the issue of the current policy of the current administration that we don't want to have any tax increases, correct? That's kind of, that. Well, that's the general, let's lower taxes, will create economic wealth. We've now said it's okay to, as Representative Jones said, the sin taxes, it's okay as long as we raise taxes on sin tax. But I'm very disingenuous about the issue of diversion of my taxes. As a person who commutes, who pays the gas tax per gallon every day, that puts some money into KDOT, we have diverted those funds for many years. And from an ethical standpoint, I'm paying taxes to support my roads. But now we're taking dollars out of that to balance the general fund. At what point, if we're going to talk about true tax policies, do we really keep them in the bucket and not divert my taxes being paid to keep our roads one of the best systems in the state? And it also creates jobs, and it creates wealth for our local businesses that builds roads and bridges. When do we talk about that? Because to me, the governor has been diverting dollars to balance this policy of lowering taxes to give it to LLCs. And Blaine, your point's well taken. I've asked my boss if I could become an LLC instead of a W-2 employee, and he just laughs at me. But that's a big advantage for people on the LLC. So I'm just very concerned. I'd like to know what your thoughts are, or keep going to KDOT, since I believe, just like Capers, we issued a substantial amount of bonds to fund KDOT, and if we keep diverting our income stream, when are we going to have to pay the bonds back at KDOT? And I'd just like to see how that ties into the overall funding and balances.
I'll be glad to respond to that. I voted against the bill that took money from KDOT. There was another reason to vote against the provisional bill. Not only was it an increase in spending, it took money from KDOT and it took money from CAPERS. Those are three very good reasons not to support that provisional bill. You know, everybody makes decisions up there based on their district and what they're doing, who they represent. I represent a district of 70,000 people, okay? KDOT is very important to our district and to this area, and so is CAPERS funding. We've got an obligation and we've got to pay CAPERS. We were in the red when I first took office. They now consider us in the yellow. We are moving in the right direction. Do I think a bond for $1.5 million or $1.5 billion is the way to go? Absolutely not. That's debt to pay off debt. We've got to be smart about this. And so we've got to dig in. And I have not heard one legislator up there or any person in the Capitol that does not agree that we have problems before us. But you know what? We're Kansans. We're very, very strong people, and we're resilient. And we will figure this out. And everything is on the table this year. Everything. That means we've got to address the spending issue, but we're also going to have to look at taxes. And I guarantee you, taxes are on the table. So if we can't control our spending, we have to address it from another issue, from the other side. And that's as simple as it is. So as much as I don't want to, we've got to be very realistic about this. And we've got built-in cuts in the income tax brackets that are coming in 2016, 17, and 18. I can't guarantee you I am one vote up there, but I do know that there is a common theme that those will probably be removed. I would almost bet money on that one. Those are going to go away. But that doesn't help us of where we are here today and now. And I agree with you. We are not going to smoke ourselves out of this or drink ourselves out of this. People are just going to cross the state line more than they already do. So I do not support the tax increases on liquor or cigarettes. You shouldn't be, again, I spoke about a level playing field with the tax credits. That's what we need, a fair and level playing field. So that's what we do. We address those. Not only are the tax credits a place to look, we have 17 tax programs approximately in Kansas where you can get back more than you paid in income tax. Now, how fair is that to everybody, that you can actually get back more than you paid in? And our U.S. president has made a decision with amnesty that has put one of those programs to where we could be even more obligated than the funds we are right now. We pay over $100 million in the state of Kansas to people that did not pay in that much in income taxes. So, and that's corporations too. It's not just individual programs, it's corporations too. We need to level the playing field. And I don't mean to pick on the federal. We're very lucky. Bill Manns, those of you that don't know,
It's Bill Mannis' fault.
He represents Senator Moran, and he is doing a great job, and I'm so happy to see him here today. So,
Well, Dennis, your point is well taken, and it's something that, you remember a lottery that was supposed to help us fund public education years ago. This is what happens when we have a less than forthright situation, when we're not being honest about how we got here and how we get out of here, and we begin to divert funds and play this shell game. There's two schools of thought on the income tax cuts. One is the shot of adrenaline story, right? We're going to cut these taxes and we're going to get more people moving here, and revenue's going to grow because people come here. Okay, that hasn't happened yet, and maybe it will, but it hasn't happened yet. The other part of that is that, well, we'll cut the size of government. We'll essentially starve the beast is the other theory, right? We'll get less revenue, and then we'll be forced to make these cuts. We'll have some hard discussions and make some tough decisions, and we're not doing either. And so what we're doing is limping along and trying to patch together a budget that spends approximately what we did or a little more in 2007, now that it's 2015, with less revenue. And that's the nuts and bolts of it. And folks, you deserve to have somebody come clean and just say it. I mean, that's what it is. It's not a movement to really cut the size or scope of government in any meaningful way. Nobody's talking about zero-based budgeting right now. Nobody's going in and saying, we're going to take this state department and pick it apart from ground zero and decide what they really need to do and how much money it really takes to do that. That's what you have to do if you want to figure out whether they're spending too much, and nobody's doing it.
We are.
It's not being done in any meaningful way up there, and certainly not on the House side, and I'll let the Senator speak to what they're doing on the Senate side, but I can tell you that House tax and House appropriations are not having those hearings, and I really doubt that in 90 days, a citizen legislature can do that. That's in-depth, meaningful work that's going to take time and people who really have the ability to dig in and examine that budget. And I would dare say that although all of us are wonderfully qualified to be your representative or senator, that's not what we get paid to do. But that's what needs to be done if we're going to have true spending examination. Otherwise, what we're going to do is continue to take money out of KDOT, and we're going to continue to move money around and ignore the real elephant in the room, which is the problem of what we've got here. Not enough money to pay the bills, and I think we all agree that, boy, it would sure be nice if we could pare down our bills a little bit too, right? So that's the reality. I think we have to be serious too about the likelihood of the current income tax policy working the way it's been promised. The top rate was 6% in Kansas in 2012 when we started these cuts. If we really think that going from 6% to 4.5% is going to recreate the gold rush of 1849 and have people flooding into Kansas because I can pay 4.5% or I can pay 3%, or our low bracket is now 2.7%. That is not a reason that most people make a decision to relocate. I have a lot of wonderful friends who have relocated to places like Texas, and it's not because of Texas tax rate. It's because this week when it was, 18 degrees for a high here, it was a whole lot nicer in Texas. And that's a trend we've seen from a population and demographic standpoint since the 1960s as people left the Rust Belt in the upper Midwest and moved to warmer climates like California and Texas and Florida. And that's going to continue because people like to live where they're comfortable. Look at what's happening in Phoenix. It has nothing to do with the tax rate in Arizona. We have to be realistic about that. And I just don't think a move from 6% to 4.5% or to 3% or 2% is going to cause that sort of, and hopefully it does. Hopefully people flood into Kansas and we've got a great problem. I hope that happens. But until it does, we've got to be smarter about not diverting these funds.
I'll be real quick, and I hope a lot of people flood in here too. Getting back to KDOT and the funds there. The first folks in my office after we got the rescission stuff was KDOT, and I walked in and I said, I'm sorry. And they were actually talking to the other representative in there, Representative Estes, and they're talking to him. And the first thing I said is, I am so sorry. And they go, oh, no, it's okay. We can make this work, And then they talked about how essentially that the maintenance part of it is going to be pushed out. Well, when we drove down to Branson this past year, literally drove through out to the east side. As soon as I crossed over, I just started laughing. My wife's like, this is Missouri. And I'm not trying to diss on Missouri, but seriously.
Go ahead.
The sides of the road, the sides of the road. If I pulled over, man, you're going to a pothole or what, I was blown away. That's where it's going to hurt us, is the maintenance. Well, and that's why I said to KDOT, I said, really? I said, you guys are cool with this? I said, how about another $100 million? And they just started shaking their heads and laughing, but I was just like, yeah, where does it stop? None of us feel necessarily good about the rescission or the things that have had to happen recently. And I think we know the real work is going to come this next year. And everything's on the table, everything, so.
Okay, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Tyson, Mr. Finch, thank you for being here today. We're right at 11 o'clock. We've We'll do one more.
I'll have to take one more.
One more? Okay, we'll do one last question, and then we'll wrap things up.
I'm Janet Brewers from rural Franklin County, Wellsville address. Just kind of a comment. I've really appreciated all your insight, the ways that you guys are handling things. I know you're really trying to work for us, and I know it's not easy. But I'm going to quote from the old farmer The income tax policy is really causing problems. And like the old farmer said, when the horse is dead, get off.
I'd just like to close real quick. You know, we work with some great people up there, and, you know, the nice thing is there is 165 legislators. So you're going to get a very diverse group and diverse ideas, but that's where you come with the best solutions. And I'm very proud to work with my colleagues here in the House. I was very happy with what they did on the rules. At least they're trying to stop some of the bundling and stuff like that. But the Senate, we tend to move things a little bit slower, and we are a little bit more diligent looking at things at times. But we sure weren't on that provision bill. So I appreciate you guys coming out today.
I would echo those comments. Thank you for coming out. I think you've got a good senator and good representative from the Wellsville area who really do have hearts in the right place and want to do the right thing. And you know, tough times, the tendency is that we communicate less and we get harsher with each other. And I would just encourage you all, communicate more. This is a time where we're all trying to come together and figure out the right solution, the right path forward, and more communication, not less, is the answer. And remember that at the end of the day, we all should be civil to each other and try to work together to make the best possible outcome. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out.
Tell them the emails. Sometimes email isn't the best way to communicate with us. I'm getting about 200 a day, so it's very difficult to get back to you right away on those. But if you want, call, leave a message. I've gotten so many comments that people are surprised I'll return your calls, but I will as soon as I can. So, and I know all of us feel that way. Please reach out to us. We want to hear from you.
Also, give us your emails if you want newsletters. If you want to be taken off, please let us know too. So.
Well, thank you again for being here, and thank you for your time and your efforts and helping us through a lot of issues. One quick announcement. Our next coffee is going to be Saturday, March 7th. Same location, same time. So thank you again for coming.
Hey, thanks for your work on that.